out here at beautiful Holladay Distillery in Weston, Missouri with my buddy Jake Stack, breaking down some prospects, talking some football, enjoying a Holladay 1856 old-fashioned barrel-aged bourbon. It is absolutely delicious. And I can't think of anything better to do than talk prospects while I'm enjoying this. And we're looking at the cornerbacks here today. Gonna talk about a few of our favorites, and we'll start with the very top of the class, Derek Stingley out of LSU. When you look at Derek Stingley, he's a guy that, you know, he's got the pedigree, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He really kind of burst onto the scene. 6'1" or 6 foot 190. He's a big physical guy. He's kind of built to be a cornerback. Yep. I mean, his frame, you see the willingness to tackle, the involvement in the run game, flying down with commitment. And the instincts really pop off to me too, Jake.
Yeah, and I think with him, you know, as a young guy, he burst on the scene, like you said. And there was even talk about him coming into his sophomore year about playing him on offense because he's just that type of playmaker. He's always around the football, kind of a ball hawk, kind of a turnover type machine, big time recruit, and a guy that got onto the field and keep in mind, he played on one of the best LSU, one of the best college football teams that we've seen in the last decade, and started as a freshman. And you see why here when you look at the highlights and just the way he attacks the game and the way he approaches the game. I mean, he's a bulldog out there.
Well, and the fluidity in coverage, like you don't see guys with that kind of movement skills very often. They don't come like him very, very often. And that's one of the things you kind of see from him is just, you know, high level fluidity through his frame and ability to transition with great ease out on coverage. And, you know, you can use him in a lot of different ways. You can blitz him even a little bit, but, you know, when you know, like you kind of see there, the ability to play through the hands of the receiver, some of the ball skills there. And he does get his hands on the ball, you know, like he's a very productive cornerback when it comes to just raw ball production.
Well, in today's NFL, you're not going to be able to play on the outside unless you're willing to come up and tackle. And that's something that we're seeing here over and over again on his tape. It shows up in droves on his film. He is very instinctive. Like he is daring you to run a screen out at him on the edge because he will come up and pop you. And as you're seeing, just turnover after turnover, always around the ball. Once again, right there, right in the right spot at the right time. Just a guy that you want on your team. Now, there are some concerns though with him, right, coming out. Didn't necessarily get a lot better as he progressed through his career.
Stingley's best is as good as anybody in the class. There's my guy that I really like here in this class, and he maybe not getting the same kind of attention, but it's Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson, another top shelf corner in this class. And, you know, I don't think there's too much of a difference between, you know, Andrew Booth and Derek Stingley, frankly. I think he deserves a lot of love for what he's put on tape. Another former 5-star recruit, very similar physical profile, 6 foot, 200 pounds. And another guy that's willing participant in the run game, willing participant as a tackler out on the edge.
Yeah, and I think when you watch Booth, like the thing that sticks out the most to me is just how fluid his hips are. And whenever you watch the defensive back position, for me, that's the first thing I want to see is what is your change of direction ability look like? Do you have the oiled up hips to be able to, you know, turn and burn, to be able to turn and run, but also to be able to click and close and come up in the run game like boom, like that, exactly right there. Really fun player, someone that I don't think gets as much love as he should in this class. And I think some of that, Kent, is because Clemson, quite frankly, wasn't as good this year as they have been in the past. So I think there wasn't as many eyes on him. Still coming from a major program in the ACC, a guy that I think is going to go higher in this draft than maybe some people realize.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very high on him throughout this entire draft process, and he's very highly regarded with all the draft work that we're doing, and it's warranted. You know, I don't think there's too much of a difference between a guy like Stingley and a guy, you know, like Andrew Booth. So, you know, when you watch him in coverage, you know, he's sticky. He's a guy that can be a true man corner. He can lock up a number one receiver. That's the kind of ceiling that he has as a player, and the range, the instincts, the athleticism, the ability to close on the football, both in the
and
run.
You see right there why he plays defense.
Yeah, there's a little drop there. But there's a good extension away from his frame too. So there is some, you know, there's some playmaking ability undoubtedly for him. I really like this guy as well. You know, at the Chiefs, you know, this is kind of guy. If he's really not as regarded as Stingley, I think he's a guy that could be a trade-up candidate for the Chiefs if he does kind of
absolutely. If he's a guy that starts sliding into the 15s, early 20s, absolutely. And Brett Veach is going to be aggressive. That's one thing we know for sure about him, is he's going to be aggressive in acquiring talent. And this is a talent that he may be willing to move up for.
Yeah, and you see that ability right there, just, kind of, being able to close athletically and go up and get the ball and extend away from his framing. Look at that.
Okay.
I mean, a little one-handed catch, in the red zone, a little ball production in the red zone. Yeah, you're not
through physical. I mean, through fighting through a little bit of contact too, which is what you're going to see in the NFL. Look at, yep.
I mean, there's, he doesn't get big-bodied by guys too often. Like, I mean, I do think there are some physical types that can get him at times, but I think most of the times he holds himself up really well through contact, through that physicality. It's going to be interesting. I think he's a man cover corner. It's going to be interesting.
Getting involved.
But yeah, you see, you can do that too. But also, his zone instincts are still pretty strong too, and that's another thing that you really like about him. I think he's a great prospect and one of my favorites in this entire class. I'm a big fan of Andrew Booth. There's a sleeper in this class too, Matt, that I really like, Martin Emerson, cornerback out of Mississippi State. He is the prototypical Steve Spagnuolo cornerback. I think he's a guy that can be really good value.
This is a Chiefs corner.
Yeah, right here. And his tape is littered with a lot of physicality at the line of scrimmage. If you're sitting him in the flat in a cover 2 kind of situation, he's a guy that's going to get in there. He's willing to tackle.
And you can see, look at the length. It just, it pops off the tape. I mean, you see he's a 6'2" guy, and you can tell without even looking at his measurables that this guy has got desired arm length, right? So he's going to be able to press, he's going to be able to get up in receivers' faces and make life difficult for them. I mean, he played in the SEC, which is, that's the cream of the crop as far as college football goes, and he more than held his own against NFL type receivers week in and week out.
Yeah, the physical definition you see too. It's not just the length. Some guys are kind of lighter. Now, this is a well-built cornerback, 6'2", 200. I would argue that he carries it even a little bit differently than what we just saw with Andrew Booth Jr. Just that definition in his frame, and you see it, and it pops up. He's a little bit similar physical profile to like a Charvarius Ward.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the same linear speed that Charvarius Ward has, but I think when you're looking at guys that kind of fit the similar profile, I think he looks very similar to and he's got the same kind of willingness and physicality that you like. And so you stick him in the flat, you let him press. You give him a little bit of help over the top because maybe he doesn't have the greatest long speed, but you're getting a guy that's an active participant in the run fit. You're getting a guy that can really disrupt timing at the line of scrimmage.
And I think that's what you're looking for with him, because the fluidity in the hips that we talked about with the last 2 guys, Emerson doesn't necessarily have that, but that's all right. He's not going to go in the first 20 picks. And so when you're taking a guy like him, you got to look at, okay, what does he do well? What can he bring to the table for us? And if you put him in a position where, he can get up and he can get physical with receivers and he can kind of dictate what they're wanting to do at the line of scrimmage, he's a guy that can win in that capacity. And if he's put into that type of situation, which I believe Steve Spagnuolo would, I think that's why you may get good value out of someone like him in the later rounds and say, why did this guy go so late? And some of this time, we will always say situation matters. And if Emerson ends up in the right situation, he can be a starting corner in the NFL and get you really good production.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he may not be as scheme versatile as other guys, but in a specific scheme, he's an absolute great value in this draft.